When you lose someone, it feels as though the world simply stops. That profound grief and helplessness leaves you so deeply vulnerable that you desperately need a comforting hand, a compassionate institution to ease the burden of mourning. You trust them. You hand over your most precious loved ones, your mother, your father, your child, into their care, and your only remaining solace is quietly speaking to the ashes resting inside that urn on your mantle. But what if the ashes inside that urn don't belong to your loved one? Worse still, what if what's resting inside that jar isn't human ash at all? This is Montrose, Colorado, a typical American town where poverty is felt, where people know each other, and life is ordinary. In this quiet town in 2010, a woman named Megan Hess took over a funeral home called Sunset Mesa. Megan quickly became the town's wingless angel. Funeral costs can be devastating for families, especially in the ruthless capitalist landscape of America. But Megan was different. She hugged people, shed tears with them, and most importantly, offered highly discounted cremation services compared to other funeral homes. She gave breaks to those who couldn't afford it and provided easy payment plans. People were grateful. They thought they had found a true friend on the darkest day of their lives. For 8 years, Megan Hess maintained a perfect storefront. Families left their loved ones at Sunset Mesa, believing they would be sent off on their final journey in peace. The handover ceremonies were respectful, the caskets were closed, and a few days later, families were handed elegant urns containing their loved ones' ashes. Everything seemed perfectly aligned with procedure, ethics, and humanity. However, right behind Megan's compassionate office, behind a thick, soundproof door, a reality was unfolding that would overshadow the most blood-curdling Hollywood horror films. When that door closed, respect ended, and the production line began. Welcome to the back room. There was no mourning here. Here, there was only flesh, bone, and trade. Megan Hess did not work alone. In the kitchen of this dark operation, serving as her right hand was her mother, Shirley Koch. Right after the weeping families left through the front door, Shirley Koch would put on her surgical gloves and pick up her electric chainsaws and medical tools. The bodies that were handed over whole and untouched, the bodies that were promised to be cremated, never went to the crematorium. Shirley systematically dismembered them. Megan sold these human remains to companies claiming to conduct medical research and education. She operated in a secretive global network as a body broker. Various human remains were packaged, shipped, and sold at massive profit margins. Sunset Mesa wasn't a funeral home. It was operated almost like a processing facility. Its victims weren't living, breathing individuals. Its victims were the already deceased and the deceived, traumatized, grieving families. Over 8 years, hundreds of bodies were subjected to this grim, unethical operation. Even bodies carrying infectious diseases, those testing positive for HIV or hepatitis, were shipped out to the global market with forged clean health reports. Human remains were treated as mere commodities, and the buyers were waiting. For the system to work, no evidence could be left behind. Families had to be given an urn. Having sold off the vast majority of a loved one's remains, what exactly were they going to fill that urn with? The solution Sunset Mesa found was betrayal in its coldest form. Inside the urns handed to families, there was sometimes a random mix of discarded ashes from different people. Sometimes it was construction concrete, packed in to provide a convincing fake weight. Hundreds of families never knew who or what was truly resting inside those jars they placed on their mantles and kissed goodbye. The breaking of the wheel didn't just begin with local whispers. The bizarre and chilling chain of events cracked when former employees grew suspicious of the constant delivery of ashes, despite no smoke ever coming from the crematorium. But the real blow came from an international news agency's investigation that exposed this massive body brokering network. When the rumors hit the FBI's radar, phones began ringing across the country. FBI agents were forced to call grieving families and deliver this blood-curdling sentence: "We are so sorry, but the urn you've kept in the corner of your home for years does not belong to your mother." The night of the raid summarized everything. When the FBI executed a sudden raid on Sunset Mesa, Shirley didn't show the slightest sign of panic. She was completely cold-blooded, because in their own minds they weren't committing a heinous crime. They were simply managing the supply and distribution process. Though public anger is understandably fixated on Megan and her mother, the true atrocity was systemic. It was a massive underlying legal loophole that allowed this level of exploitation to thrive in the first place. In the United States and in many parts of the world, organ donation is subject to strict millimeter-precise government regulations. But what about a whole body? Or non-transplant anatomical parts used for research? This is exactly the dark legal gray area where $1 billion underground market feeds. There is a massive void in American law regarding the buying and selling of whole bodies or remains under the guise of scientific research. Body brokers aren't scrutinized by strict federal laws, but rather by loose state health codes. This meant that Sunset Mesa was able to operate less like a criminal enterprise and more like a legal smuggling cartel exploiting a lack of oversight. What truly terrifies us as an audience is exactly this institutional rot. It's the fact that this profound betrayal wasn't committed by a violent criminal lurking in the shadows, but by a state-registered, tax-paying, invoice-issuing official institution that hands you a tissue with compassion in your most painful moment. Megan Hess and Shirley Koch are in prison today, but as long as these legal loopholes remain unclosed, the body brokering industry will continue to operate under different names and different signs. As long as death remains a billion-dollar market, someone will always step up to supply that raw material. The next time you step into a funeral home to say a final goodbye, the comfort of a compassionate smile might feel a little different. Because behind those closed doors, the line between grief and greed is too easily blurred.